any time. But he stayed with me because he knew how to let things take their natural course and when to let me find my own way. Chet cut the best records of my early years, and may have told me once or twice to straighten up and looked with disapproval on my drug use, but like Don Gibson, I think he thought I was a good renegade. If anything, Chet was too nice. He would internalize so much that he grew a tumor and suffered cancer of the intestines. Now, the business literally made him sick. The stress was really too much. I couldn't have helped trying to communicate ideas that I was still trying to explain to myself. There just wasn't enough happening musically for me, and I'd be right on the edge of things, and the way the music unfolded didn't seem to be pushing it over the top. They were good, smooth records, and there I was, rougher than a goddamn cob. He'd let me use some of my band, and then he'd put other people in there. And sometimes those things that he put in there were just enough to keep it from what it was really supposed to sound like in my imagination. Now, if I wrote those songs and honed them on stage with my band, I had an idea of what they should be, and they weren't. Barbara and I had started to split up. I think Barbara was just as loyal and true to me as she could be, and though she never believed it, knowing all of those women were out there on the road, not knowing what I was doing, suspecting me of the worst crimes, I tried to be good to her. Because we had had such misery through Lynn, I felt that I owed her a straight chance. But it was just a constant battle. We'd fight on the phone, we'd fight on and off the road. All of my ex-wives hated what I did, and they were so jealous of the music. It was like the music was another woman. They kept hoping that I'd give it up for them, and they were right to be concerned. I wasn't about to stop playing the guitar and singing to keep my home life together. I remember Dwayne Eddy talking to Lynn, telling her that she had to grow with me in order for it to ever work. And she had flat out told him that she did not want me to be a star. Lynn, or Maxine, and now Barbara, knew the music, the real other woman, was taking me away, and it had to hurt. Sometimes, especially in a relationship with someone you love, you bring out different qualities, and I brought out a meanness in Barbara that really shouldn't have been there. After a time, I knew that it wasn't going to ever work anymore. I'd never be back. I took her home for the last time. Then I went wild. I was everywhere, all in a day that became a night that became day again. I would never just go in a room. I walked all over it. Curtis Buck was a crazy son of a bitch, and he ran around with me. While I was singing, he'd go out and find the girls, and if we needed drugs, well, he'd find the dope. The music, the pills, and the women. Now, that was our life on the road. Sometimes I'd be with 2 or 3 a night. Richie remembers me reserving extra rooms in hotels and running up and down emergency staircases to get from one room to the other. Once in Louisville, I had girls stashed on 3 different floors. I had been awake for a few days, and I was determined to visit them all. Waylon, he said to me, "You're going to kill yourself." I took pills by the fistful. I'd start with a desoxyn or 2 and some little white crosses. Then I'd wash the whole mess down with an Alka-Seltzer that would kick it in the butt. It'd come on like gangbusters. Then I'd drink coffee every once in a while, and I'd pop another one to keep going. A doctor once told me that if I took 1 desoxyn a day for a month, I'd be a dead man. And I had to laugh. I knew that they might kill some people, but they didn't kill me. I thought I was invincible. 20 amphetamines a day was normal, and 30 wasn't unusual. I'd hit the ground running, and I never had a hangover because I never gave myself a chance to. If I would manage to go to sleep at night, I'd put a glass of water by the bed and about 3 pills right by the phone. When that wake-up call came, I'd take the pills, lay back until they kicked in, and then I was ready to go. Gotta go. One of the phrases that I always heard was, "I wish New York and L.A. would just leave us alone." The Nashville Sound never realized that they actually did leave us alone, to our detriment. If you were a country artist signed to Nashville, the record company treated you like an uninvited guest at a dinner party. They didn't even set a place at the table for you. take you seriously. Their corporate base was in New York or L.A., and we were out of the power structure. No matter how many records you sold, all their promotion went to the big pop acts signed to both coasts. You had to fight and scratch for any attention at all from the record company. Country music reacted to that by drawing the wagons, getting defensive, and building a wall around Nashville that kept country artists in rather than outsiders out. I went to Los Angeles and cut Chris Christopherson's Lovin' Her Was Easier with Ricky Nelson's band. At the time, he had a good bunch of guys with him, including Sonny Curtis. It was a great record, up-tempo with a good guitar riff. They wouldn't release it because it was recorded in L.A. They didn't want to set a precedent. They wanted all of the country hit records to be cut in Nashville. I never did feel at home. I didn't know it yet, but I was in trouble the minute I got there. I found myself trying to fit in and having people wedge me into places where I didn't work. I was being told over and over, you just don't do this and you can't do that. There's a certain way we do things in Nashville. We know what's best for you. All you're allowed to sound like is the Nashville sound. I would think of ideas, and before I got a chance to put them down, or even hear if they even worked, they'd tell me I was wrong. I'd say, what the fuck you mean it's wrong? Well, it'll make the record skip if we put that big drum beat on it. We don't understand that rhythm. We have to smooth it out, or we'll never get played on radio. And the best one was That's Not Country. I always hated labels, and they kept trying to stick one on me. They didn't know who I was or what I was about, and I tried my best to keep them in the dark. I remembered what Buddy had told me about not pinning yourself down. The very things that weren't country about me scared them, even though they tried to call me everything but straight country. They always needed a marketing plan. Folk country, Nashville rebel, outlaw. And they used it to understand me and try to put my feelings in a frame. And even then they didn't get it. Music is just music, and people who put labels on music are those who have to merchandise it. It makes their job a lot easier. I wanted to cut my records a whole different way. I wanted to build the song in the studio, not in the control room. I wanted the dynamics to happen out there with the band. I just did what felt good to me. It was like Grady Martin when they asked him if he could read music. Not enough to hurt my playing, he replied. The truth is, I never understood much about the mechanics of music. I'd come in wrong and turn the beat around. I was the only guy in the world who could hum out a meter. My guitar playing came from inspiration only. I did it out of self-preservation. I could never stand to practice. Everything I know, I learned in front of an audience. I went through my marriages like Grant went through Richmond. I finally gave up. I said, hell, I'm never going to be able to be married. And when I thought it was just about all over, when I quit looking, that's when I found the right one. I started with Jesse on a level ground. I was seeing Barbara before I left Lynn, and Lynn before I split with Maxine. Jesse Coulter, on the other hand, had just gotten unhitched from Dwayne Eddy, and we both were free. I guess it was her spunkiness that attracted me to her. She never let me off the hook, and she loved to pick at me and make me mad. She called it getting my temper up. Finally, I told her that she gave me more shit than anybody, and I didn't think I liked her very much. I like to see the fire, she said, pouring a little gasoline on the flames. We both knew right off that it was something that could be dangerous. And like a fire can warm you, she started drawing me in closer, bringing me out of the cold. She lit a fire under me all right and kept adding fuel, and pretty soon we began traveling together. Her mama was an ordained Pentecostal preacher, though she wasn't judgmental about our relationship. Jessie had been playing piano in the church and revival meetings since she was a little girl, and it gave her an inner strength, even though, when I met her, she thought she was in the cavern of her life, where she had thrown off all that she had known and gone seeking her own answers. Jessie had come back to the point to where she realized that she needed something more than she could ever know. And on that rock, she built her faith. For me, it was the music. For Miriam, Rebecca, Joan, Johnson, Eddie, and soon to be Jesse Coulter, Faith was expressed through the music. Together, we started learning the eternal melodies and infinite harmonies that has become our song of songs.